What's going on, y'all? Integration or segregation? Did it help us or harm us, right? We're going to break this down in this episode as we go on our series, our Black History series this month, right? So what's going on, y'all? It's another episode of Mind Your Biz. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. BlackWealth.
Hey, and this is Mrs.Fabfinancial. What's going on?
What's up? So we in it, right? Black History.
Hey.
It's February.
The little month we get. Thank
you. Know what I mean?
Appreciate that.
My birthday
Allowing
month.
Us to fully talk about us. Thank you for that.
For sure.
Thank you.
For sure.
For giving us the shortest month in the...
We exploring integration, or what you say, desegregation, or, you know, all apples, oranges, oranges.
Right. Did the assimilation hurt, hinder, and if we didn't, what does that look like? You know what I mean? Because sometimes we like to live in this utopian fantasy, like, you know what, if we didn't integrate, we would be a powerhouse. We would be amazing.
Right.
Would we? I mean, the system of racism that really is about classism is a mean mamma jamma.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
and before we get too deep into it, right, so let me just say that even though we're moving along on Black History Month this month, right, this is still in the subject and the topic of minding your biz, because we're exploring Black history from a entrepreneur perspective, right, a people perspective. And I think we have to explore our history to understand our present so we can reshape our future. And so this speaks through Black businesses, as you'll hear us talk about it today for sure, on what we have built, what we have, right, and what we can continue to get is the whole foundation of this whole month's episodes as we talk through Black businesses. So
no, for sure. I'm 100%.
Just so y'all be like, what that got to do with business?
Well, everything is business called minding your biz because it's all things business. Right. Your business, the economical engine that fuels your family, but your mental business, your personal business, it's all under one house that helps you navigate your life.
For sure. You know, a lot of people just don't see how it's connected.
It's all connected.
Because if my personal house ain't in order, it's going to affect how I show up at work with my business.
If your spiritual house is in order, like it's all together. It's all connected. And so when we talk about our history, our historical context, if that's not in order, sometimes we can't move forward.
Right.
If we don't know where we came from or the system that's in place, why is it there? So we can help navigate the traps that was set up against us.
For sure.
So I hope y'all got that. That's
right. Our house in order.
Yeah. Right.
Now we set the stage.
Minding your business. That's right.
Now that we set the stage. So, I mean, integration, did it help us or harm us? I mean, from, I know we're going to kind of go back and forth on what we both found to kind of give a common answer, but I think I found it interesting as I was researching. I was researching I was asking specific questions like, what was the economic statistics of this, and this, right? And I found I don't want to use the word conflicted, but it's just different sides of somewhat of the same coin, where I can't be like it really helped us or it really harmed us. It's a lot of factors to just kind of consider. Right,
because when you look back, it's hard to determine because it's so new. I mean, Brown versus Board was 1954. So we're not talking about something that happened 400 years ago.
For sure.
Segregation is like in our backyard. It's like, there we go.
Yesterday.
Right. So it's sometimes
great grandpa and them.
Absolutely. And I think people need to, really take that in context as in its entirety, that segregation was not a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was in its immediate past. Right. Almost. So when you think about did it hurt or hinder us, I still feel like the jury is still out. But I know that we are financially, economically, politically, to me, in a space that may be better than I think if we didn't segregate. And I
explain that.
Okay.
Go deeper.
Because, like I was saying in the beginning, the utopian idea of before segregation that Black communities at large was thriving and succeeding. Okay. There were pockets.
Yeah.
There were movements. There were neighborhoods, and that were thriving. Yeah. But that was not the majority. The majority of our people were in poverty, in extremely unequal living conditions. The inequality in the 30s, the 40s between Black and white was stark for the majority, of Black Americans. And so how, even going into the tax system, right? How is money distributed? Well, of course, with property taxes. And so if you purposely set up and alienate a neighborhood and fund it based on the value of that neighborhood, you've already knocked us out. You've already undervalued us, which means you don't fund us, right? And so our schools, our infrastructure, those things that we had to develop on our own, we wasn't really given help. And so when you look at the other side of the fence, the white neighborhoods and the white picket fences, it looked more appealing because even some of those, they had pockets. It was just larger pockets. Because at large in the 40s and 50s, Americans themselves were impoverished. There were a lot of poor white folks, but racism is set up really to distract on the real issue, which is classism. So you create an idea that the white people over here are doing really, really good, but they still were uneducated. They still were underfunded.
It's almost like racism seems to be emotionally based. Like if you really take a step back out of it, racism comes off like emotional when finance and economic gain comes off like unemotional. Like that's the logic behind the advancement of more white people than Black people.
For sure. So the places racism, the system of racism is put in place to me to further divide and prop up classism. Like the people that locked us both in the room don't really care. They just want to further divide and make more money. But I'm going to create this thing called racism. I'm going to create a race, a class based on phenotype, what we look like, to say y'all are less. And I'm going to put laws and systems in place to further divide that. But y'all both locked in this room. Y'all both in here. But I'm going to tell you that you better just based on your color. And I'm going to put some laws in place. But really, we both losing here. We both losing. Now, we're losing worse. I mean, we're further down the totem pole, but racism is set up to me to really to prop up classism. Because right now, today, when you look at the rules and the legislations and the things that's in place, they don't care about people. They care about money, people with money. It's poor white folks in rural Georgia who have no roads, who have schools that are underfunded, no health care, no internet. I mean, they're food deserts. Manufacturing is left. Some of those towns are devastated, are done. And it's nobody, they're not like, well, let's just help the white towns and the community. It's a smokescreen. They don't care about none of us. But racism was put in place to me to further divide it. And so just to bring it back full circle, I think that segregation and us coming in saying, hey, we want what's on the other side of that fence, make it fair on purpose because the Constitution said that we are all created equal, right? Basically forced us to, I'm not going to say allow, but it gave us a little bit more, as we both are locked inside of this room, the barrier between this and that kind of lowered. We're still in the room together. But the barrier that's set up between you and I, I'm thinking about like a Jack and Jill situation, a bedroom suite. Mm-hmm. It's a door in between. we're just going to open the door, but we still on the same side of the fence. We're still without. We're still lacking. There's still a majority of people who are running in this thing that control wealth, that control how money is distributed, and we are behind the fence on it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to at least attempt to catch everybody up. So, I mean, it seems like as I was like doing the research for this episode in particular, it's almost like you gotta ask yourself the question, like, when whoever, right, decided to wanted to leave Europe and Britain's rule and all that stuff, because you still racism
based off of classism,
right? And that was
right.
That's what I'm saying.
It's all classism. That was white on white crime.
Right.
It was white on white crime.
When they came to America with the intention on listening, from the 1500s maybe, that I'm gonna pull out slaves to come build America, right? I feel like it almost was like, well, we gonna use you guys to build up America, but then it was just like people was just like stuck here. You know what I mean? We ain't just gonna build America and then go back home. Stay here.
So I think, so the sinister act at play for me, right? That's why I said I don't know if we would have won, right? If we would have stayed segregated and said we want to build up our own communities, the system, the maniacal, strategic planning of people who came together and said we're going to transport Black people around the world and create an inferior class on purpose for free and economic advancement.
Yeah,
is a system that we were so far behind to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it to do and to,
it's been in play.
It's been in play when they came together in Africa, the great countries, and said we're going to divide Africa. Why are we fighting over who's going to take this and that? Let's just divide it and go. And we never had to sit at the table. We're going to put in place, and we're going to create a subservient class with rules. We're going to demonize them. We're going to say that they're less than, so that when we ship them around the world, everybody understands they're not even human. They're subhuman. These people aren't us.
Yeah.
So we can create them as chattel.
Yeah.
They're property. Because they set it up so. So when we talk about the people that came to America, right? And they were like, well, we want to be free. We want to have religious freedom. We want to be able to do what we want to do. The classism thing was already perpetuated in the European countries, right? Because the nobles and the monarchy was like, this us, we were ordained through God. This is a business. Give us all your money. We're going to levy taxes on all y'all poor folks. Give me all your grain and your gold pieces.
We was born rich.
We was born rich. This is how it's going to go. And so it's hard to kind of wash that stank away when you were a victim under that. So those same victims that came here and said, we want freedom, we want to make our own way, was kowtowed and bowed down and said, all right, well, this is a system. Even though we left to be equal, we left because we wanted our freedom, we're going to continue to perpetuate this and be instrumental in creating a subservient class that could benefit us the way we were treated in Europe.
Yeah.
It's almost like, the poor beat up dog. He keeps coming back, right? You keep beating him up and he keeps coming back. So I don't know if we would have been, if we stayed segregated, if we never integrated, and the Black communities around the country, we had Rosewood, we had a lot, but I don't know if we had the infrastructure enough to fight that system, that beast. I feel like we would have been another South Africa. I don't think we would be here as advanced if we would have stayed segregated. And that's purely my opinion. There's not a lot of fact in it because it's so new that we don't really know what that looks like. You can't measure that.
Right. So, I mean, the question is did integration help us or harm us? so as we attempt to, I really didn't get a clear answer, but as I attempted to research this and find out, it was interesting to me because you could see that Black people went through periods and stages where all wrapped around business and money that affected the people altogether. Mm-hmm. So we talk about in the 1800s when they started to allow, the South to, or slaves to do like trade, and then they would have to pay the slave owners, and most of the Black people are paying for their freedom, and they would do it through trades and jobs and stuff, right? And so then it started to say like, hey, we got to get from out of the South and go north because they, it's not like that up north, or it's not as brutal up north as it is down south.
For sure.
And so you got a lot of Black ownership, that came up through the 1800s, and one of my fights was, as we talked through like politics, it's just that white people was strategic about like, hey, well, Black businesses are starting to make a lot of money. Not only that, they are taking white customers too.
For sure.
Because in those times, 1800s, early 1900s or 1800s, Black businesses was servicing everybody. It wasn't just like just a Black thing, or it wasn't like a code like just Black businesses for Black businesses. Mm-hmm. They were servicing white people too, mm-hmm. which produced legislatives to say, hey, we got to stop this mm-hmm. for our economic, or we not going to make no money.
Which is classism. It's right, all about the money.
For sure. So then you fast forward into the late 1800s when they built up the Jim Crow era, which made the shift for whites to deal with whites and Blacks to deal with Blacks in the South, but that mentality carried north. So I was like, man, that's interesting. So then you got. I mean,
it's a very similar concept. In the South, you had slave plantations. In the North, you had the Industrial Revolution and factories. It was really not a big difference in conditions. The only difference is you weren't forced to work out in the sun and you weren't whipped to death. But those factories gave you a little bit of financial independence, but not much, right?
Right.
And the Industrial Revolution was great and it helped fuel and make America wealthy. Mm-hmm. But the people in those factories, the Irish, the Italians, and the Blacks, it was not a great, and children. Mm-hmm. It was not like, oh, this is such a utopia, this is great. It, to me, further emphasized classism.
Right. But you start picking up like that, like toward I guess I'm saying so before Jim Crow, it was almost like we were slaves, but as more slaves started to get their freedoms, it just became just like a world of people living here and it's free reign on business, right? Like look at the bigger picture of it. Like if I start a business, I could be successful. I could go to the white man, the Black man, anybody that's over here that's going.
But those were like minorities and outliers. It was like, sure, we can let some of you through, but the most of you will.
But it's no different than today, Black or white. You got outliers in both races too. But the first definition that we see that begins to outside of slavery or within slavery or an extension of slavery that for sure separate the people was the Jim Crow era, where it was like, listen, Black on Black and white on white. And so white people stopped shopping in Black businesses and started to shop their own. And that's how you got the advancement of like, I don't want to say advancement, but that's where like Black on Black businesses really became a thing.
Yeah.
Especially when in the beauty industry, barbers, mm-hmm. You got Madam C.J. Walker, all that stuff. And Booker T. Washington was pushing Black ownership in them time periods.
For sure.
And then what I think was interesting is Black on Black businesses, right? That we come out here and say, hey, we got Black on Black businesses. And if you look today, it's really no different than it was then as far as the advancement of business development. They were still like mom and pop shops mm-hmm. from then even to today.
For sure, and that's
there's no growth and development of a business infrastructure to where we can hire people, where we could, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Because it's the lack of resources, it's the lack of access to resources, right? So mm-hmm. even during its infancy, right, when you think about big business, right, the monarchy was big business, right? We talking about the Atlantic slave trade was business, right? These people, it was business. And so we weren't privy to that. And so it trickles all the way down, even during after Reconstruction. Yeah, we had a business, but we were never given the ability to grow that into industry. You know what I mean? Like everything that was created that could possibly turn into something of industry was taken away. Any idea, we created the stoplight, right? That's industry. We created and transformed the light bulb, but we were never able. They took it away from us, right? Because
Wall Street started off with
it's money, right? So that's why I go, if we stay segregated.
Through the emotional buildup, people was tearing our stuff down anyway.
Right.
So, but we had the businesses that was mom and pop, but didn't have the ability to. I guess on that point, you might could argue, because if let's just say,
it's not like we didn't have it and try,
right?
But when the system is set up to just pull it away from you, no matter what you do, so you got to say, well, let me try to fight another way. Right? It's trying to knock down the barriers to go, all right, well, we innovated, we educated, we're trying to set up our communities. Y'all burning them down. You not letting us get our patent. You not even allowing us to give us access to make our way.
Right.
But creating this narrative that we're lazy and we can't do it.
Right.
It's like a double-edged sword coming at you from like two dragons coming at you from the front and the back. How could we sustain that type of trauma when your community, your livelihood, your mere existence is threatened every day?
Yeah.
That's heavy. I don't know, as a people, we would have found a way because that's just who we are. But I don't know if we would have been better off than we are today. And that's the question. I don't know.
I think on that.
But y'all can answer that question. Do you think we could be better off or not? Like, that's a deep question. If segregation wasn't existing, right?
I think I'm gonna take a stance on it. I think we would have been.
Okay.
And I'm just looking at it from so when you break down Black-owned businesses and the history of it, when you break that down, you have from the Reconstruction era, right, in the 1800s, right? Then you got before the Emancipation Proclamation, you had a lot of Black businesses that started out of the need of Jim Crow, that Blacks could only shop with Blacks. It produced big problems that had good solutions to them. If we travel, where do we stay? If we go here, where do we find food?
The Green Book. Green Book was a map on where you could go without going into a sundown town or getting your ass scorched. Right? There was a navigation.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
But that was business for sure.
So you had a lot of businesses that were birthed through that era of the Jim Crow era. And then when you look at it, right, history shows us that in the 1900s is considered the golden age of Black businesses, because you got to look at it like the seed was planted from Jim Crow, and then it started sprouting and harvesting in the 1800s to the 1900s. 1900s it started sprouting.
Yeah. You
had more black ownership. You had a lot of successful you had more millionaires and successful people in real estate, all kind of fields that would have grown. But also in that 1900s, that's why I say it probably hurt us, because through us integrating, or even before that, like you talk about people just destroying our businesses, if they would have never destroyed them, or if we would have had the infrastructure to defend our stuff or rebuild, or what that looks like, imagine what businesses would be like today if they was never burned down or hit with any type of political arena for them not to grow and succeed. And it's that mindset that I choose not to get caught up in, it's the Black man, the white man, but I choose to look at why did they do that? Because a lot of that is media pushing Southern men that had the push, right, to see no, they Black, they worse than you, right? But you poor too. Even as the slave master, you just a little bit above the Blacks. So if I'm from the North, from a financial perspective, push that narrative down South, but these people up North seeing oh no, Black people, is making money. They're about to be an economic force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And then in that same era, the 1900s, you got stuff produced like, which we'll say for the last episode about banking and finance. But you got 1913 was when the Federal Reserve was that whole system to come about, birthed capitalism even further in America. But the 1900s produced a good era of the golden age businesses, right? Where you had, it was like Black Business Double. It went from 20,000 in the 1900s and to 40,000 in 1914, right? From 450 undertakers to a rise in 1,000, right? From drugstores rose from 250 to 695. Right, like these are the conversations that we are not hearing in schools or nothing. Black insurance companies,
for sure,
in Durham,
that period of growth and abundance. Right. But what I challenge a little bit of that is that it's not this or that; it's all of it. So when we pushed for equal rights and to integrate, we also needed to have conditions in place that allow us to be on a better financial plane to not defund us, because that's what happened in the push for equality, right? In the push to integrate, it caused a backlash in our communities, right? Schools were closing, administrators were losing their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, it started to really create, all right, well, we're just going to defund and bankrupt their neighborhoods, right? And so when we push for equality and integration, again, because the sinister beast on who we going against always 10 steps ahead of us. We didn't carve out the access to funding with that. With that, like if we integrate, yes, we want to be in the same schools, but what do we do with the people over here, right? The taxi cabs, the business owners, the this and that.
We didn't fully think about that,
right?
I think like from
because they were so used to oppressing in the system, like, all right, well, if we give them equal rights, well, we still got laws in place that what? We're going to do what? We're going to bankrupt and tear down their neighborhoods. Or we're going to, the CIA, we're going to bring drugs in. Like, it's always like a step ahead of what we're trying to do because we're so new at this, right? The system of classism started 400 years prior. So they had a lot of practice on how to manipulate people and create a class system to keep them doing what they need you to do. So,
I see what you're saying. I think we were both on equal playing fields on opposite sides though. I think that rules was being written as we went and laws was being structured as we went. Because when you look at it like, okay, the 1800s businesses was doing good. We was doing businesses with all kind of people. From that birthed Jim Crow because white people knew that they had, the only thing they could run to was politics. Head,
right? You talking about business. So that means what? Now, business plans a year, 2 years out.
For sure.
So when we're talking about what's happening today, they're already like, okay, well, if they do this today, we already going to put stuff in place for tomorrow. We already are laying the seed and the groundwork to keep them oppressed based on what they're doing today.
But what I'm saying is I think that when they came to form the government in America, and even America, what I want to believe based off what I'm seeing and the patterns that I found is I don't think that we was ever a factor, period. I don't think that they even thought that black people would want to be free, would advance in any shape, form, or fashion, let alone get as far as they got. So even though the government was set up already, right, laws and stuff in order, all men created equal based on the Declaration of Independence, all of that.
But think about the mindset and why they did it from where they were coming from.
Right. No, I get that. Right. What I'm saying is I think that they brought black people over here and they just absolutely counted us out. Right. So now in the 1800s, when you have black businesses coming up and they're doing business with white people doing business with black people. Now that's like, this is unheard. This is a problem we didn't think of. But, how can we react? Well, we could go into the policies and say, listen, Jim Crow era. Now white people can't do business with black people. And that started in the South, which the mindset bled north because it wasn't like a northern thing. That was a southern law. But then But then, so black people was like, well, all right, well, you don't want us to do business with white people. We just going to do business with black people. And our dollars was circulating. We was building well. You go into the golden age of the 1900s where things were like booming.
Yeah.
So now it's like, well, dang. Jim Crow didn't stop them. They still going. So now what do? Well, we just got to tear down the city. So now you got Black Wall Street coming down, Rosewood coming down.
The Harlem Renaissance.
Like all these other cities that's coming down.
And that's what I'm saying.
So I think that birthed the civil rights because you had a lot of people like, listen, well, we done tried our own businesses. You separate us and we was cool. Now I think, well, maybe if civil rights come into play, well, maybe we could just integrate and we thinking like maybe that will solve the problem. And I don't think we fully thought that plan through.
Because I feel like for Black Americans during that time, it was always to prove we are just like you, right? Instead of saying, we don't need to be like you. Just give us a piece of what we need to thrive. You don't want us to be involved. You don't want us to interact with you. Fine. But we live in this country too. But I felt like it was an undertone of wanting to be accepted and acknowledged because the narrative was we were subhuman. The narrative was we are inferior intellectually. We are inferior to them. So in sports, in arts and entertainment, in medicine and education, it always felt like we were trying to prove to the system who set it up to be against us that, look, we are valued. Look, we're just like you. I felt like some of it was like, almost like a pick me mentality. Like, look at us. We are the same. And I look, we are not this, or we're not that. And I felt like some of that caused us to not see how they kept moving the goalposts. And so I don't think we were strategic in civil rights, getting what we needed without leaving our businesses alone, right? Unattended, or leaving our industry without access to more funding.
And I think that, like how we say, like, racism is the smokescreen of classism.
Absolutely.
I think that mentality is the smokescreen of our race as well. Like, because I don't truly think that the natural order of things is to be like, no, we are just as good. I think the natural order of things was like survival. No, we need to be able to live and thrive on our own and not be dependent on the white man and have our own stuff.
I think a mindset of that is there, but you also have to think of the 300 years, and we talked about the Willie Lynch of conditioning that we were not inferior, that was bred in us.
Right.
So subconsciously, there was a lot of self-hate.
For sure. So it's like a both and.
For sure. And wanting to measure up.
Right. And it's like a both and when you look at it, because you have people, I mean, you're going to always, everybody who was you look at it, everybody who was an outlier, like going as early as Harriet Tubman onto the Civil Rights Act, they spoke they took a stance on, no, not that we want to integrate and we think that we want to be equally accepted. It was a stance of, no, you have the power within yourself to free yourself.
Well, at that time, it was definitely survival. It was,
right. That's what I'm saying. And
but when
so
you start moving,
evolved.
right, when you start evolving and moving forward, the needs and the mindset start to change as well it should as you're moving through history. Yeah. And so as our mindset changes throughout history, I think ultimately deep down inside, it's a self-hate because of how we were conditioned, the brainwashing on white Americans and Black Americans, right? And we talk about that Willie Lynch, that's heavy. That's something that's still on us. And white Americans on thinking that their ice is colder, right? Wanting to be accepted and acknowledged in their eyes. Yeah. I think the product in which they created is almost like the abusive parent, the abusive husband, or the abusive spouse, but you still want to be in their bosom. You still want to be acknowledged by them. And I think And it's like that too because we don't know where we came from. We don't know the history of who we are as a people. You know what I mean? So it's tough. Education is super important to help us free from that. And I think, and that's
because that's the area you should be moving. That's why I keep talking about it. Like the 1800s was black business was doing really good. We was doing business with black and whites. 1900s was the golden era. And I think from the destruction of black towns and because black people were advancing, white people further used not only politics, but people and military tactics to keep us down. And then when you got the civil rights, I'm like, man, it was so much stuff. It was so much stuff happening in civil rights. I had to look up again, like, well, when was the Black Panther Party? And I'm like, that was in the 60s too. I'm like, there was so much stuff in different pockets of the U.S. at one time.
That's why I said we can all do it at one time.
Like, that's crazy.
Because it was economics. They played, all positions on that baseball mound. It wasn't singular focus.
Civil rights was more Southern-led. Black Panther was more West Coast-led.
Yes.
Then you got Between the Nations, and that was more like East Coast.
Then you had women's rights.
The women's right and all
the
that
movement
stuff that came through out of D.C. Like, it was... And then you have to look at it too that I think that it just brought on an equal playing field because nobody really knew. Like black people was fighting for black rights in America. But then through our fight for our rights, birthed the rights of like any and everybody.
Of course,
from all over the place.
Because it's classism. But civil rights helped everybody.
Yeah.
It helped everybody say, you said we're all created equal. Right. And that no matter what my race, color, creed is, I should still have the equal opportunity of advancement just as the white male does, regardless of his lineage. Right. You said you want a classless society. Well, let's prove it.
Yeah.
Let's prove it. It was like you created this system, the Constitution. Put your money where your mouth is. This is what you said. Let's make it so.
Yeah. And then you got I agree. So then when I was like, you get all like the big points of the civil rights. You got, 1948 when President Truman segregated the armed forces. You got 1954 Brown versus Board of Education. 1955 Emmett Till happened. 1955 Rosa Parks happened. And what was interesting when I looked at the Rosa Parks, let me pull up this other article, was
but they use their own legislation, their own words against them to force a mindset cultural change, right? If the civil rights integration movement never happened, the mindset of white supremacy and separation would still be here with us. Is it totally away from us? No, it's not.
Yeah. But
policy forces people to move differently, even if they don't want to. And hopefully over time, your mindset in the kind of erratic ways you think about race will try to slowly evade, right? And so that's what we hope after each generation, that racism and our biases against each other will slowly wane, right? The wall tends to go down, hopefully, right? But there are people who still try to prop that up, right? Because the system is the system.
Yeah.
And the goal is to acknowledge our past, to understand our past, but also understand the sinister play at act. It's really not about black and white. It's really not. It's there. It's really like a smokescreen for what's really happening with us.
Yeah, we got to debunk that classism system. But if it ever be a time where black people was to wake up on their own, from my history of seeing it, this would have been the time to do it. And I think we just, like you said, we had the blinders on what we was fighting for as far as like equality. Like, I just want to be accepted into the white world, that we missed like what was really happening in the middle, even of the civil rights. Like, so this would have been this singular event that I would have been like, no, y'all got to pay attention to what's happening. Right. So from Rosa Parks, right, who they say was the first person to be, not allowed to sit in the front of the bus, right, which birthed the boycott of the bus. But what happened in that, which I thought that was interesting, was it says the city, a relatively large network of black-owned taxi companies, 18 companies operating approximately 210 cabs, provided the first solution. So first it was they say, hey, we're going to use Rosa Parks because she wasn't on the, we're going to not allow her to sit in the front of the bus, right? Boom. So they said, listen, we're going to, in 24 hours, everybody mobilized, got together, churches, everything like that. We're going to get together and we're going to boycott the bus system because more than 75% of the dollars moved through the bus system was for Black people to get to and from work. So it started off with Black-owned cabs being able to move the people, and they said, hey, we're going to bring down the rate from what we charge to move you in a cab to what the bus rate is, so it doesn't hurt your pockets. So when they did that, the taxi cabs was moving. Then the city said, no, we're going to put a legislation on taxi cabs and fare. Mm-hmm. So then that mobilized them to do almost like the Uber that we see today mm-hmm. of organizing.
Yeah.
And what they miss out was all these things happen. That's why I be pushing the force of economics and business, is because in the middle of the civil rights movements, it was Black businesses that gave people the economics, the ability to even mobilize and move to even continue the movement in a peaceful manner, right? So it was people that was organizing in the Black stores and say, hey, we gonna this is the headquarters in our drugstore. We're gonna say, hey, Mrs. Farrah got to go from here to over there. We got to coordinate who can pick her up with the buddy system and pass.
Yeah. And
it wasn't until they realized that Montgomery was losing money mm-hmm. after they had fought on that for over a year that they said, hey, we're gonna fix this. So now that Black people can use the bus. And I think if we would have really, really paid attention to that, it would have took a course or a different direction on even the civil rights movement from the 50s then, because you see that we bled them through their money, which made them wake up and pay attention.
But at the time, and I get totally what you're saying, but the focus was civil rights, was to be treated equally, was to be treated fairly, right? So I don't think, hey, when we talk about what happened after that, the taxis having our own buses of operation, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what's like, all right, well, let's just let them come on. Just come on. They could use these buses. It's fine. Just come on. They don't have to sit in the back. It's fine. Because of the economics, yeah. Right? Because they're thinking and playing a different game than we're playing.
Yeah.
Right? They're, like I said, 4 steps ahead. We aren't thinking that, once we get it, now they move the goalpost again.
But see, that's where
kept changing it and moving it. So every time you're like, we got this. We got a little bit of equality. We're going to move it again. Now we're going to defund you. Now we're going to redline you. Now you can't get credit. Now you can't. They just kept moving it, right? To create that separate movement, because it's about a working class, keeping a working class people at large to fund the top 1%.
But and that's where I think I think that we give them too much credit, because I think that everybody, that's why I say they really counted us out. Like, as we wrap this up, they counted us out completely. Like, they didn't realize from one woman that they chose to be like, hey, you're not gonna sit in the front of the bus, that birthed the bus boycott. They really didn't think that we was going to hold out for over a year and not ride the bus, which crippled the city economically, which made them say, hey, no, let's give them the bus.
You forced their hand.
And I don't think they realized that to stay a step ahead, that was like a in the moment thing. Like, hey, we got to do something because we losing money.
Well, of course, even the police in Montgomery were pulling people over. Or what you doing? You riding people. Like, the whole system was at work against us.
Right.
Even during that process.
But what I'm saying is it was happening like hand in hand. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, they didn't know our resilience and what we were going to do. Everything had when we made a move, they made a move. It was just literally back and forth.
Because they had the systems. Right. So we were always playing at a defensive posture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus they're offensively running the plays. And we're like,
So I don't know. I guess the jury's still out. But did it help us or harm us? It's an interesting conversation, interesting debate.
Yeah.
I think as we move toward our progress today, that we should focus on a little bit of both, right? Our ability to develop Black businesses, not just start them, right? And from my perspective, I'm looking at it like, hey, all these eras, 1800s, 1900s, civil rights, Jim Crow, right? We had the ability to start, grow, and sustain businesses, Black dollars circulate, and we should keep on that track, right? So did it help us or harm us? I don't know. With the Civil Rights Act being in play when they passed the bill, it definitely integrated us. But then you started to see discrimination.
You had to force that, right? I mean, every step of the way we had to fight.
Right.
We had to fight. Even when laws are in place, it doesn't change the feeling, the mindset, and the behavior of the people who've been living in this system for a long time. Yeah. Right? Just because you say it so in the book, right? They said all men are created equal, but we weren't. Right. So you have to force behavioral change in people. And I think that as we wrap up, even for Black History, that we do introspective work, right? Yeah. How us as Black people, as a community, as business owners, help push our people forward, right? And it is circulating the dollars within our community, first and foremost, right? I feel like you should, everything that you do, from getting your hair done, your shampoos, your soap, your clothing, your detergent, you should try to integrate more Black businesses in that. They're out there, your sneakers, your clothing, right? The people you do business with, the services, right? Try to integrate Black people in that. Right. That helps. That helps.
So y'all continue the discussion. Let us know. Like, share, comment. Please leave a comment. I think it's a good, we got some type of solutions, but a good topic. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. And we'll see y'all in the next episode. If you have any questions or comments or concerns,
we gotta get our call to action in there. That's our team, right? They like, don't forget, like, subscribe, and share.
I'm telling you, my bad. So if you got any type of want to get in touch with us, make sure you click the links in our bio. Yes. We got them there. You can also comment where we get your feedback, so we can bring up conversations or anything like this you want to hear. We really kind of talking about this during the period of Black History Month. And as we move forward, we'll start developing businesses even more.
We're Black business owners. We want to do business with you. Yeah. Allow us that. Yeah. Click the link in our bio. Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, and let's go.
Yeah. We'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace. What's going on? We're glad to have you at another episode of Minding Your Biz podcast. Listen, everything that you hear or see on this podcast episode is for educational purposes only. We have not seen your books. We have not seen your specific situation. Make sure you please seek your financial advisor for anything pertaining to your situation. Peace. All right, y'all. It's a wrap.
Listen, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends to come check us out at the Mind Your Biz podcast, y'all.
And we'll see y'all in another episode of Minding Your Biz. Peace.